Hey, what's up? And welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today I'm talking about the fourth installment in a strangely really long-running Christian film series called God's Not Dead. And this one's God's Not Dead, We the People. God's Not Dead 4, or We the People, revolves entirely around the concept of freedom and what that means, especially for families that choose to homeschool their children. When an assessor steps foot into a family's home as they are homeschooling their kids, they are shocked to learn that these people are teaching the Bible as opposed to the pre-approved Common Core lesson plans. A judge even decides to fine them if they don't send their kids to a real school within 10 days. To fight it, these parents, along with their favorite pastor, travel to Washington, D.C. to talk to the bigwigs about how our country was built on a foundation of Christianity, and we'd be nothing without that. And if they win, homeschooling goes on, business as usual. This series is not great, but I keep going back to it because there's usually a fraction of each movie that appeals to me. Being a criminal justice major, I always could appreciate a good, lively discussion from two opposite sides of an argument. And that's one thing that these movies have usually done pretty well. Usually with Christian cinema, they try very, very hard and succeed at representing one side of the argument. God's Not Dead at least tries to represent both in a somewhat respectable manner. There's one part of this movie, though, that I feel is incredibly racist, but we'll get to that. But before we do, I did want to say that this fourth film in the saga, it's easily the best. Easily. It's nothing spectacular, but it is probably the most relatable on both sides, as I think it's ever been. And the legal arguments, they make sense. I've always said in terms of the setting and the content, a religious film has a place in cinema. If it's done right, I can love a faith-based film. And a lot of the arguments made in this movie had to do with what the United States of America was founded on. And there was a lot of Christianity when our country was formed. A lot of ethics, morals, and judiciary law was built by religious individuals. And they tackle that in this film incredibly well. It's a good way to look at this divided country and ask ourselves how it got to be that divided in the first place. This film strives to answer that question in a slightly conspiracy manner, but that didn't really bother me. As a fan of legal battles and strong debate and speech skills, as well as a fan of Washington, D.C. as a backdrop in film, yeah, this is easily the best movie in the series. But it does have at least two glowing elephants in the room as problems. The first being its own foundation. This case in the movie opens up because some kind of assessor shows up to sit in and judge people on how they homeschool their own kids. First of all, what's that? I have family that have homeschooled for years and never once did anybody watch them teach. Since COVID began, I have also homeschooled my own kids. Again, no assessor. Already that's raising some red flags. And then it goes to court. And everybody's acting so appalled and so shocked that this family was teaching the Bible. Now, wait just a darn second. I'm pretty sure that the first thing you think of when people ask why people homeschool, you immediately think because they're Christian. Isn't it widely accepted that a bunch of homeschooled kids are homeschooled so their parents can include biblical teaching? I mean, am I missing something? So then a judge orders them to send the kids to a real school in 10 days or else they'll be fined $1,000 a day until they end up doing it. Again, what? I'm sorry, but this entire foundation makes no logical sense. I mean, if this ends up happening, and that's a big if, then the legal arguments that they bring up would indeed be kind of realistic, but I don't ever see us ever getting to that point, so that's a problem. The second glowing problem in this movie actually comes down to something racist, as I had mentioned before. One of the side stories in the film focuses on a Middle Eastern family. Now you have this father who disowns his daughter because she transitions to Christianity. He yells at her, he hits her, throws her out of the house. He's a bad dude, and he stays that way until he prays to our God at our church. And then suddenly he's all smiles and a good guy again. That struck me wrong, very wrong. You know why he was praying in our church? Because the doctor said, maybe you should pray when his daughter was sick in the hospital. So why exactly did he immediately go to the Christian church? Why did he immediately pray to the Christian God? It just goes to show how Christian media has this insistence on villainizing anybody who isn't Christian. The first movie had one character, one, that was so against Christianity, and the only thing that they knew on how to fix that situation was they killed him off. Then all is right in the world again. This is certainly a flawed series when it comes down to logic, and especially when it comes down to inclusion and equality. But it often finds its strength in its dialogue with the debates, discussions, and court cases, and specifically making those primary characters shine in a way that feels inspirational. The end of the movie gave me The Majestic vibes. If you've ever seen that movie, it's a somewhat serious Jim Carrey film that ends with a legal battle as well that kind of leaves you speechless. And I had some of the same vibes watching this as well. So I'll give it credit where it's due because that was cool, but it's not the best movie in the world either. So let's go ahead and break down our final score. From a technical, unbiased perspective, this film is honestly, it's not bad. The Washington, D.C. backdrop gave the series the soul that I feel like it needed all along. It also had some inspirational and almost political musical score that helped the movie feel that much more authentic. The dialogue was strong when it needed to be, and actually the writing all around wasn't terrible. The foundation kind of sucked, and it has a problem with inclusivity that I couldn't help noticing constantly, but other than that, this is a fair, unbiased score of 64%. As for how I personally felt about it, or my bias score, again, I don't love the series, I don't love this movie in general, but I can say it was a lot better than the first three by a clear mile, and I was engaged during the trial bits. But there were also parts of the movie that kind of upset me, and there's always been a part of me that, while watching these God's Not Dead movies, has constantly sided with the villains. So it's not for me, but I know for certain that if you are a Christian, you'll love it. My bias score is 56%, meaning that when we combine the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 60%, 60 out of 100 possible stars, or a C-letter grade, which is the highest I've given any of these movies. So guys, are you a fan of the God's Not Dead series in general? And if so, leave your comments about the series in general and this movie in the comments down below and how you rank them. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert, he is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie.